Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm William Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of the Up Arrow Podcast, where I feature the best minds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and beyond as you up arrow your business and your personal life. Today's guest is the kind of human who can talk to you about customer retention, homesteading, and moon cycles all in the same breath. Andrew Christison is the founder of Retencity, a company that's thoughtfully reshaping how brands think about lifecycle marketing. While most marketers chase hacks and attribution band-aids, Andrew zooms out, way out, and sees the entire flywheel, traffic, conversion, retention, all orbiting around one central force, relationship. This episode is a masterclass in scaling smarter, serving deeper, and building a brand that actually matters. Andrew Christison, welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, William. This is exciting. Let's talk life cycle and life.
Yeah, I've got a lot of interesting things I want to talk to you about because we've chatted a little before. I do want to give a shout out to the one and only Dilyar Asghar. If you're in e-commerce and you don't know him, you're missing out. He's the one who put us in touch for this podcast. So thank you, Dilyar, for making that happen.
Yeah, we love you, Dilyar. Dilyar also an iconic young gentleman who is passionate, charismatic, and always happy to connect people and lead with his heart.
He really is. Last interruption, and then we'll get into the good stuff. I do want to announce our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million and one that IPO'd. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. Okay, on to the good stuff. Let's talk about this flywheel that you showed me. Break it down for me.
Yeah, so the way that I like to think about e-commerce, so I've been in the space for about 13 years at this point in time, and working with, in speaking with hundreds of brands a year, having the opportunity to really understand what makes them tick and grow and expand. Really, when we're talking about on-site for brands, and we're talking about e-commerce in that capacity, we're talking about the marketing flywheel that starts with a traffic. So first, you need to make sure that you're getting folks to your site. If you're starting a business from scratch, this is true just as much as it's true if you're a $100 million, $1 billion brand. So traffic is step one. Step two is once they're on your site, you need to be able to convert them. That's a lot where Element comes in and you come in to making sure that those conversion rates are hard hitting and performative as possible. And then step three is retention / lifecycle. So the marketing flywheel is a very simple framework for really understanding where you need to focus. If your site isn't getting substantial enough traffic, that's really where you need to begin to understand and maximize the channels that are available there. That could be Google AdWords, that could be Facebook, that could be TikTok, that could be ChatGPT optimization these days, SEO, etc. Conversion rate optimization could be testing on site. It could be optimizing your website. It could be migrating to a platform that that is already optimized out of the bat. As well as has the integration ecosystem that can provide the best benefit. And when it comes to retention, as you know, I like to refer to it as Lifecycle. Retencity is a full service lifecycle agency. And I like to view the entire world as Lifecycle. And Lifecycle is really the main communication channel. So marketing, messaging channel for your brand. So that's the voice of your brand. That's the relationship element of your brand. And if your traffic and your conversion is to a point where you actually are scaling properly because of the things that you've done already to date, in order to make sure that you're taking things to the next level and you're treating folks with the quality experience that you would want to be treated as a customer of yours, then that's where Lifecycle really comes into its own with email marketing, as well as SMS marketing, as well as like on-site list growth, as well as any other channel that could be corollary to that, mobile app messaging, et cetera.
I love that you called out that idea of even, if you don't have traffic, then none of that other stuff matters. But if you have traffic, but you haven't done these other things, that they don't matter. They all play in together. And the image that popped in my head as you were saying this is just like the classic guy that's done all upper body and hasn't done legs at all. And he's got the chicken legs. And you're like, okay, you're imbalanced here. There's an imbalance. we can visually see that when it comes to somebody who's working out. How do we see where the imbalance is between those three in this flywheel?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, really, it's relatively simple. If traffic is the top of the funnel. So and it is probably not even the very top of the funnel. What you're doing in order to get the traffic is the top of the funnel. That said, you can very simply look and see how many unique site visitors folks are getting per month, what the sources for those unique site visitors are, what the intent of those unique site visitors are, how long they're spending on site, et cetera. That is a pretty heavy determining factor of where they're going to go. So, for example, you could have insane site traffic, but it's through SEO that you've done old school style and you've written 7,000 articles that are kind of corollary to what you're selling, but they don't actually fit the mold. And so you're getting, a million site views a month. But when it comes down to it, those site visitors aren't actually converting. They're not actually driving the growth that's necessary. So that's one aspect. Is the traffic quality? Is it coming from the sources that you want, that you desire? And then is your method for gaining that traffic a scalable method? So yes, you've been able to invest X amount of dollars. Are you able to invest X times 2 and get twice the results? Are you able to invest X times 3 and get 3 times the results? Do you feel comfortable that at least maybe you can go up a tenth of an X every single time and continue scaling it? And if that is true, then the next thing is conversion. So conversion is something that people focus on really early in their business. And then it's something that I think people neglect until they need to come back to it oftentimes, unless they feel like they need a design refresh and they're not even thinking about conversion actually. But then the next step of conversion is both content oriented. So optimizing specific pages for what content is on there. And then secondarily, optimizing for in running tests. So testing content, testing actual copy, testing structure, et cetera. Once again, this is not actually what my business does, but these are all things that are absolutely necessary when you are running this type of business, and something that we really, we try and advise companies aggregately on holes in their marketing flywheel, even if we are only working on one aspect of it, because we know that strengthening one aspect is only going to make our work more productive, more profitable for the brand, and higher revenue generating. That said, once you've taken care of CRO, which is actually probably a continuous process forever, if we're honest with it, then retention comes into play. So I think that oftentimes starting off an organization, unless you have high AOV or really sharp brand, we work with a lot of beauty brands, so obviously pristine brand control is critical there. But unless you have those factors, you could theoretically get away with maybe not doing the best job with email for a little bit.
Sure.
But once you start to hit decent numbers like 5 million annual revenue, 10 million annual revenue, the expectation of your client base changes pretty significantly. And the expectations for you to be able to continue to grow and scale past those numbers requires you to actually make sure that you're building the relationship that endures the test of time. And that relationship really starts with a lot of the messaging that they're going to be receiving from an ongoing basis. Then you will see that email and SMS and apps, mobile apps, become a major driving force for driving traffic on an ongoing basis and just become a part of the flywheel in all facets of it. That said, if we're sending traffic to a landing page, for example, and that landing page or that product page isn't optimized for conversion, theoretically that you could have 2x the conversion on that same landing page, but we're sending X amount, we're sending a certain amount of traffic and we're not seeing the results, then we want to advise you on that also to make sure that you have a healthy pipeline and make sure that you're creating the quality experience throughout the entire engagement that you have on the lifetime of your business.
Like you said, a lot of these, all three of these pieces of the flywheel are ongoing optimizations. You're constantly figuring out how to get more traffic, cheaper traffic, better traffic. You're constantly figuring out how to improve those optimizations, the conversion rate optimization, et cetera. You're constantly working on how do we make sure that we're retaining even more of our people. I like that you called out that this is, let's say, the $10 million business, because that's really who I like to focus on. Let's say that you've made it to 10 million. You've proven you've got some product market fit. How do you know, looking at this $10 million business, whether or not the problem with which one of those three, how do you know that you're like, retention is the problem that you have right now that we need to dig into? What metrics, what are we seeing going on with the business?
So that is good. So it's tricky, I think is the correct answer to that. So as you pointed out, and as we've been discussing, and I think as we both mutually agree, like this is all interdependent, right? So the whole world is interdependent, everything that we're operating on. And when we're talking about marketing in particular, it's very interdependent when you're talking about one organization's marketing, one organization's business. And this is why you see businesses that are maybe the same exact revenue, they're the same exact size, they have the same amount of employees, they have very similar looking positioning from the outside, and maybe one is going to be twice the value next year and twice the revenue next year, and the other one will be about exactly the same. And it's because it actually does come down to the details when you get inside it. So a lot of it is analyzing what the performance is, what's going on actually within the structure of the program. And so there are bad habits that some companies get into, like sending daily emails or multiple emails a day, or sending, not doing any priority in regards to the triggered automations that they do. So for example, you could get like an automation for browse. Simultaneously, you're getting like a cart automation. Simultaneously, you're getting a campaign email, et cetera. You could have someone that's super neglecting list growth, which is the bread and butter that actually makes all of this happen. It's the fuel to the engine that runs Lifecycle. So absolutely critical. And so all of these little things, all of these little things matter and make a big difference and compound. And that's why, and then in addition to that, it's on top of just those best practices and the initial look into the brand, it's really looking at now, are you actually speaking to your customer directly? Are you keeping your consistent brand messaging as it stands? Are you fulfilling the expectation and the promise that you gave them in your ad, that you gave them on your website, that you gave them on the pop-up when they actually subscribe to your email? And if so, is that promise something that you can continuously fulfill over and over and over again to build the consistency that builds the faith that gets somebody to convert on an ongoing basis? And so your brand is unique to you. Your customer experience is unique to each and every customer that you're dealing with. And then also your repurchase cycles are unique to your business as well. So all of these factors really come into play and need to have a look taken at them in order to make sure that we're maximizing as well as we possibly can on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Again, it reminds me of, you were talking about how the message you need to be able to back up what you're saying in the ads and back up what you're saying, it reminded me of, let's say you've got a dating profile and you say, I like long walks on the beach, and, we go on a date and we've gone, 0.1 miles, and you're like, all right, that's long enough. You don't like long walks on the beach. You haven't lived up to the hype that you said here. You like romance. You don't like long walks on the beach. When I think about it, because I like relationships just being in my mind, a lot of founders, you brought up list growth. A lot of founders think of list growth as just collecting emails, but it's really about starting relationship. This is something you told me. How do you help brands frame it that way from day one?
So really, and this is even potentially a controversial take within the industry. So
good, I like those.
The way that I stand, and it's not controversial to like the normal person, but it might be in the industry. But basically, the way that it works is you are starting off a relationship with trust. Like, let's say that you do say you like long walks on the beach, and that is not fulfilled. How do you feel at that moment? You feel like there's a disconnect, and then maybe you're like, you know what? I'll still give them a chance. Sure. Maybe I was wrong about that. So you still go on the second date or the third date or the fourth date, but then you see maybe like there's but you always have this in the back of your head. They lied about that first thing, like right in the beginning. This is awkward. This is weird. This is strange. So I believe the same exact way actually about consent. So consent when you're opting in is absolutely critical. It's not, sure. I mean, in GDPR is a little bit more strict, and CASL in Canada and CCPA in California. But when we're talking about it, really from just a normal perspective of, are you gaining consent from the get-go? Are you like, did I say that I wanted messaging from you in any capacity, in any way, shape, and form that you have recorded? I think that that is kind of like the first step. Everyone, like when it comes to lifecycle marketing, there's a lot of bad actors just in general that are trying to get into the inbox, and that ISPs are constantly trying to fight and move to the appropriate spots in the inbox. You don't want to add to that rubble, right? Even if somebody came to your site and they didn't consent to anything, let's try not to send them a message that they didn't consent to. And so I think starting off, just fulfilling that very promise makes a lot of sense. Secondly, when we're talking to a brand about like what their offers are and what the best offers they can give are, and what their customers typically want, and then what's like more normal in their industry and their vertical, other brands that are more similar to them or have like a similar offer for coming through the gate. Then we just want to make sure that we can be aligned on something, and that alignment can work with the way that their business is structured, the way that if they're selling everywhere, quote unquote, on TikTok Shop or Amazon, that we're respecting the boundaries of those platforms as well simultaneously while we're providing this offer. So we want to make sure that we're giving them something that is a clear and clean offer, that is something that can be viewed as a privilege to the customer, and we're going to be giving them messaging that is high quality and interesting and unique, and also designed to like educate, inform, and convert. So it's not just about giving you the shiny object and hoping that it converts. And then this is when cadence increase can really it can get conversions, but it'll eventually burn your list as well. So contact acquisition needs to be thought of not only at the acquisition point, but it needs to think about, well, how do I give this contact the highest possible experience and the best possible experience over time? So where do you see a lot of those really bad practices initially, like in the normal world? Not necessarily e-commerce. You see it in folks like selling something that they're only going to sell for like 3 months. So if I'm just selling you an information product, for example, and this information product is only available for a limited time, blah, 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 I can send you like 75 emails in like 30 days. And, if you subscribe, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't, no sweat off my back, et cetera. But when we're talking about a brand that is trying to build an audience of people that are passionate about their brand, interested in their brand, and actually care about it. And there's companies I'm sure that you know of that you have mad respect for. Maybe you subscribed to their emails for a little bit and then you unsubscribed or something, or maybe you just heard about them and you still haven't ever subscribed or even gone to their website. But when somebody brings them up, you're like, oh, I've heard great things about them, XYZ, and you have all of these comments about it. Do you want that interaction to be like, oh my God, they like completely created the worst experience for me ever? Like I didn't even consent and then I got all these messages, or I consented and then I got in and they didn't give me the offer that they like said initially, or it didn't pop up for 5 more days. And then when I did receive emails, they were not appropriate. And they were missing a lot of the pieces. And so when we're talking about like personalization, segmentation, we're talking about like leveraging tools of like predictive tools, et cetera. That is really just, those are tools in technology to help us to gain intimacy, to gain gain trust in a relationship that we're building over time in a sincere and genuine way. And that's how you keep a healthy database growing and expanding and hopefully flourishing. And it makes it so that if they unsubscribe because, you know what, maybe they're not in the buying cycle anymore and they're not ready for it right now, or maybe they're getting from somewhere else and they just don't need to receive your emails because they're automatically getting it from another place that you're selling it. And you want them to still maintain that positive attitude towards you and your brand.
This is why I love personifying a brand, right? Because if you personify your brand and you think, is it weird for Joe to send Kelly 13 text messages in a row on the same day? Yeah, it probably is, right? Like, maybe Kelly appreciates that, probably not. And so it's like when you personify your brand, you can actually put it together of like 2 human beings actually creating a relationship. Does this make sense? Let's talk 0-party data then, right? So I want to talk about how early is it to start collecting preferences, because creating a relationship means you know more about that person. The more you know about the person, the better you can serve them. But there's like this balance. You can't just go on, again, going to the first date thing. You can't just start going down. It's like, well, what kind of medications do you take? Do you have any allergies to anything? It's like, wait a minute. That's some personal information here. Let's just eat some dinner and talk about a little bit more superficial stuff. And so, how early can you start collecting zero-party data on preferences and stuff?
Well, I'll give a comment on those questions. So obviously, if there's HIPAA violations occurring and
Sure.
and you're selling those things,
bad example.
you want to be even more careful. But zero-party data is something that you obviously want to start collecting as early and often as possible, and as deep and as long as you possibly can. And so I believe in like zero and first party data pretty heavily as well. So when you're looking at brands coming through from social, where brands came from, which we previously mentioned there, so, or where traffic has come from, then tagging that traffic for contacts as they come in also makes sense. And maybe it doesn't give you a lot of information. Maybe it doesn't give you the exact right view now, but maybe it will later. As we continue understanding that audience and understanding of the profitability per channel also, and making sure that things are being as productive as they possibly can be. And maybe if they're coming from Facebook, for example, and you're paying a lot more, which a lot of people are paying a lot more for Facebook these days, then that paints a different scenario. And maybe those customers just need a steeper offer also, and you're willing to lose a little bit more money or invest a little bit more money or have tighter margins in order to convert those, because you are pouring so much in at the top, especially during a market like right now. That said, the zero party data. So we work with a lot of beauty brands as well. So we work with all types of e-commerce brands, but I think beauty brand is like a quintessential example of like Lifecycle glory, because it utilizes all the aspects. Really, when we're talking surveys, so I think surveys make a ton of sense, and survey funnels also make a ton of sense when people want a customized experience, like what is your skin type, what is your hair type, what is what are your health issues when we're talking about supplement brands, what are the things you're hoping to accomplish and achieve when you're talking about fitness brands, and I think that asking the questions that kind of let people disclose where they're at in a manner that is like safe and comfortable and informative for them. I mean, think about how, like in the early days of the internet, how many of those, like, what Simpsons character are you? Did you end up doing? And people love them because it does tell them something about themselves, but it also tells them something about what they should be getting and what is recommended for them also. And I think that that's very useful for them to be directed to the right products and services, but it's also simultaneously helpful for us to be able to make sure that we understand at least a little bit more. And maybe you answered the questions not how you would answer them every single time. So we're not going to exclusively shut you down from like receiving any communications outside of the questions that you answered, but we will try and lean in to making sure that we're helping you solve the problem that you mentioned that you had. And if we're showing other messages, we can show dynamic content perhaps about the things that you asked about and requested about. And we could start segmenting. So we know that people that have this problem may be more likely to purchase at this cycle, and so on and so forth. So you can gain a lot of information from explicit information that's received. In addition to that, within emails specifically, you can have UTM structures built throughout your entire email. I mean, you do. Sure. Hopefully you have it set up correctly. Not everyone does. You probably should if you're listening to this.
Totally.
And so as such, you know where people are clicking through on the email and what people are clicking on also. And so you can gather together if you have one specific product that a lot of people, like a bunch of people have clicked it through on over a year's time, and you've been collecting this data, and then you're running a huge sale just on that product. Guess what audience is probably perfect for that product? Not only your engaged audience, your VIPs, your loyalty folks, but also the folks that have been clicking on it in the last year that haven't yet converted, or maybe they did convert and it's been a long enough window. So I think just thinking about how do you help people to better navigate your brands, products, SKUs, everything about your brand. I mean, the education around it. How do you help them to get to know you better and to find what they need from you by the things that they've told you, whether it's explicitly through like a survey of clicking on things, or it's kind of implicitly, I think, also through clicking on things on site, or how they got to you in the first place.
I forgot all about those quizzes, like which Simpsons character are you? You brought that up, and I just kept thinking. I was smirking for a little while there because I was like, I can't even fathom the amount of psychographic data that BuzzFeed had on every single person. Like an insane amount of information.
An insane amount. I mean, there was, and you just like did them no matter what.
Right.
Like I didn't even there. I think that in the early ages of the internet, and this is all of us today, but in the early ages of the internet, we were just like, you know what? For us, we're willing to trade like our personal data
for anything,
for anything. And now we're at the point where like maybe we shouldn't have done all of that. Maybe we should be a little bit more restrictive about it. So I really do like the privacy wave that's come about, and I'm definitely not taking those surveys anymore. But I do think that it does tap into something. When you can have those questions and answers and surveys and information from your client base to help them navigate how they can be successful with your brand.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we're building a list, there's always the argument between, let's say, quantity over quality. And I think you would agree with me on this, that the highest quality person that you can add to your list is going to be somebody who purchased from you at full price. Like, not even at a discount. Like, that is a very high quality person on your list. But then there's, the other flip side of that, which could be the lowest quality person that you have, which is they didn't even click on the Facebook ad. It was just the Facebook lead, right? And so it's like, boy, this is a really low lift. They didn't have to fill anything out. Like, this is the lowest lift possible. How do you figure out, which to focus on, quality versus quantity, and balancing those two?
So, I mean, so when it comes down to it, you want to test new acquisition channels if at all possible. So when you're talking about Facebook leads, way back in the day, we were working with a brand, and they a jewelry brand that ended up exiting after growing pretty substantially. They were really focused on how do we acquire more, and they had maxed out kind of like what they did on all of their paid media channels, and we were killing it on the retention side. And so we suggested doing Facebook lead ads as a test. And we've done this multiple times since then, but this is a brand that was like super bought in on like, let's do it and let's figure it out. So what they were able to figure out is they were able to get like each email address for about $2. And we just had to see, what could we do in order to make sure that was a profitable acquisition for them by converting as best as possible. And so we created a custom experience entirely behind that so that we could convert those folks. And we did. And it ended up being very successful. I think the price ended up fluctuating after like 5 or 6 months to like way higher, and that died. But it was a very lucrative way to go about it for a temporary period of time. On the other end of the spectrum, we do work with a lot of brands that do contests from time to time. Mm-hmm. Contests are either like very, they're very hit or miss. And I would say more often than not, they're miss, but well orchestrated, well coordinated, working tightly with influencers, your core demographic, brands like that are just perfectly aligned with you. They can be very successful. But for these also, we tend to like to make independent automations that are, so it's like a modified welcome series for these contacts, just because they tend to be much lower quality, and we want to get rid of them if we possibly can, if we need to, and if not, we want to make sure that they're going to be active. But we want to be a little bit more delicate with them, because you could get an unbelievable amount of contacts, but those contacts could be low quality, and you don't want to be sending off low quality contacts messages. Because they're going to end up having deliverability problems on the long tail. So when we come back to like did somebody consent as well? This is the same concept of, or like the publisher's clearinghouse. Like, why is it's the same concept. Like, I had no idea I consented to that. And so in those scenarios, we want to make sure that we're not sending to people that are like, who is this brand? Why are they contacting me? I want nothing to do with them, et cetera. We want to make sure that we're sending to people that are looking forward to seeing the messages, or at least interested in seeing like, what is this at the very least. And then if that curiosity keeps bubbling, like they're opening all the messages, they start clicking through, et cetera, then we're getting to a place where we know we can start building a relationship over time with them.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up like sweepstakes and things like that, because I hadn't thought about contests in a while, but I love a good contest. One of the things that I always critique people about whenever they would run contests is it's like, okay, you're giving away an iPad. So is everybody else, first of all, and you sell patio furniture. Like, what does the iPad have to do with this? There's no relevance, right? Versus, let's say that you sold pool furniture or pool supplies or whatever, and it's like you're giving away a pool cleaning robot, and you're like, that's actually a giveaway. You're like, well, if they actually want the pool cleaning robot, there's a good chance that they have a pool, and if they have a pool, they're likely interested in all the rest of your products, and so there's at least some relevance to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're in a brand, so when you're talking about like specifically the pool cleaner, right? There's probably not a huge quantity of places they could buy that specific pool cleaner also, right? So maybe if you're the manufacturer seller, best case scenario, if not, are you like one of like 7 retailers that are like the largest, and you have other notable things about you, et cetera? And so I think thinking about like how that is going to come across and what the relevance of it is so spot on of an argument and discussion. So I like the idea, which honestly, it's not. I don't think it performs as well for like the largest possible quantity, which is oftentimes what contests, especially partnered contests, will go for. But I like the concept of gift cards or credit or store credit as a gift. So mostly because it gives you. It's bringing the customer right back to you to give that experience to as well. And also, everyone that's signing up, they'll be like, $200 to this company. Like, who is this company? And it gets them a little bit more curious than to this merchandise that is $200 value. Maybe that merchandise is more enticing, but are they going to be able to tie that to your brand over the long horizon of time? And is everybody else going to be able to do likewise? I'm not so sure.
I like
that.
So
contests are a little tricky, always.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the tech and infrastructure, because that's another aspect that you've told me about that, people are missing out on. You called it like this gold mine of tools that they aren't using. What's the most common blind spot that you see in tech stacks at the $10 million level?
So this is a really good question, and I appreciate the phrasing of it also. When we're looking at brands, so obviously making sure the water is flowing fully and completely and well in regards to contact acquisition and list hygiene is critical. But the next thing, and that we do in the very beginning of engagements, is really focus heavily on like their technology infrastructure. So we live in the age of ecosystem. I love it. Honestly, like I think to imagine that a company like Shopify could have thousands and thousands and thousands of integrations, and companies like Klaviyo equally can have thousands and thousands of integrations that are deep and run well, is astounding to think about just 5 years ago, honestly. So when we're working with brands, we're inevitably working with a relatively sophisticated tech stack. Yes, when you go the further upstream you go and the further enterprise you go, everything looks familiar, and everything looks pretty familiar once you get to 10 million also. But that said, there are oftentimes a massive amount of integrations that are critical to come into the ESP that you're working with. And a lot of times people have the technology, they have like an integration set up, but they're actually not feeding the data in correctly. And this is way more common than I would ever like to say. But this is the truth of the matter. I saw a presentation about 10 years ago by the former VP of marketing for the IBM Marketing Cloud, Silverpop, and he was saying that that 90% of their clients use less than 10% of their platform. And
Wow.
I don't think that I do think the adoption is a little bit higher today than it was then because things are a lot easier to use. But I do think that it is that everything is horribly underutilized in regards to not only the core ESP platforms, but also the integrations. And so just neglecting all of that additional data, you're talking about creating a personalized experience and collecting zero-party data, like the zero-party data of, do they have a ticket open? Did they do a review that was positive or negative? That information or that specific data, having that within your platform is going to give you a leg up for being able to be relevant and accurate to your client base. And if they did leave a bad review, did you trigger an additional message saying, hey, how can we help make this better? Did you have someone from CS reach out or give them the opportunity to communicate on a ticket after that? So technology setup is a critical component. And then over time, you have to check it on a regular basis to make sure that it's still operationally working the way that it should. And integrations break over time. I mean, this happens. So if someone has a subscription technology and that subscription technology stops sending over all of the inputs that trigger out the messages, you need to make sure that you're staying aware of these changes and modifications over time. And what often happens when we're coming into brands is we'll see, oh, this broke 4 months ago, this broke 7 months ago, this probably broke about a year and a half ago.
Wow.
And so they just don't realize that these little tiny components have been kneecapping them for so long. And then we're able to come in, we're able to get everything lined up, and then we're able to just keep it buttoned up on an ongoing basis while we're building the rest of the program for them.
Yeah, it sounds like you're actually about to give more than just a golden nugget, a golden egg here. I can hear the chicken a little bit in the background.
I did not lock out from the adjacent area. We have 100 chickens here.
That's awesome.
So
I have chickens as well, but only I think 7 or something, not 100 of them.
See, that's a reasonable number. I think you're at the reasonable range.
I brought a chicken on the podcast one time. Actually, I held it. Aaron Orndorff. You know Aaron Orndorff too.
Yeah.
It's like Aaron Orndorff is. He's always showing off his bunny rabbit or whatever. It's like so I brought a chicken on there just to one up him a little bit.
That's perfect.
So okay, let's say that. Bad review, that makes a lot of sense, right? There's nothing worse for let's even say advertising, than advertising a product to somebody who's already left you a bad review. They're just going to destroy you in the comments on that ad. That's terrible, right? So having that data flow, but besides that, what are some other examples that you're like, look, these are the things that need to be flowing in there?
I mean, I think that when we're talking about CS, having customer service tickets available,
Sure.
And as much information flowing in from those is super critical. Some platforms are like building this all in like the unified sort of manner, but most people are still using third-party technology for it. Absolutely important. Once again, when we're talking about like pop-ups, yes, once again, platforms have their own built-in, but there are third-party pop-ups, and like how much information are you actually getting into your platform, and is that information actually correct and accurate? Do you have data integrated into the platform from paid media? So should we be utilizing are you sending out like certain lists to it, or are you having to export it and send it over? Either one of those is like perfectly acceptable manners of doing it, but let's discuss what the strategy is and how it's actually being executed. When you're talking about the $10 million mark, like what becomes more important, I think once we kind of are establishing, like making sure everything's flowing properly and operating cohesively, then really the next step is, what's the lowest hanging fruit, easiest to execute, highest potential revenue yield on the roadmap, and we're executing. But we're trying to be also conservative in regards to like recommending that they are spending more money on more platforms and more technology as well. But that said, I mean, when you're looking at things like CDPs, or you're looking at platforms that may offer the capability for better identification as well for contacts, there's multiple things that come into play. But it's oftentimes when is the right time for those. Was the right time for it 5 years ago? Was it today? Is it a year or two from now? Or maybe even longer out from that. So I think that just keeping in mind that while, I think a lot of people like to look at a brand that's just killing it out of control and everybody's a huge fan of. They have a really charismatic head of marketing who's on and talking about it, what they're using and what their tech stack is across the board. And people go, oh, I need that exact tech stack. And they get it. And then they don't have the people to execute on it. They don't have the infrastructure within their organization in order to do it. And it's just not operating the way that we want it to.
You answered the next question. I was going to ask, when would it be hey, let's do this in a year or two? I was like, I couldn't think of a reason why. You're like, well, why not integrate it now? The reason being, you might not be able to actually do it well. Is essentially what you're saying.
Yes, and also maybe it's not until the 8th step. Also, like if you, let's say you're missing 7 automations or key automations that probably make sense, that need to be implemented step by step and tested into and make sure that they're performing. And these should be the chunk of your program that's generating 30-40% of all of your revenue. If those aren't set up properly, what's the point of getting technology that costs like a few extra $1,000s a month that gives you insights on ways to better test those in the future? I think really going that, I don't like to say crawl, walk, run because it makes you think we're crawling, but really I think you want to take care of that lowest hanging fruit, easiest to execute, highest potential revenue yield, and you want to move out from there. As long as it's, you also want to make sure it's relevant for the time frame and the client base and stuff like that.
What's one let's say relatively small automation that has an outsized return?
So I would say, if we're just going to ignore welcome, browse abandonment, add to cart, and checkout, although add to cart is probably one of the most neglected ones
still
for Klaviyo customers, because you do need to add like custom code to your site, and people think that abandoned checkout is it. So I would say add to cart. We'll say that first. But I think back in stock notifications. So especially when you're talking about a scaling e-commerce brand, this is just something that happens. So the smaller you are, the more likely you are to go out of stock. Your inventory is not under control yet. And that's okay. That's how everybody is, unless you're a second-time founder or third-time founder and you're an ace. You're going to run out of stock of things, especially your best-selling products. So making sure that you have people lining up in order to get them when they come back in stock, and that is capable of being properly communicated, is absolutely critical, and will basically just put money in your pocket every single time you get things back in stock. But then as you grow, your SKU counts continue to expand, and you're going to run out of stock of more things more uniquely. You're not going to be able to really still assess 100% accuracy how much inventory is actually necessary until you get to a more advanced stage in the organization oftentimes. Now, some businesses, they don't ever have this problem, at least that I see on the outside, and I am very impressed. But I would say nearly every business that I've worked with has had some sort of issue with inventory management, and at younger stages particularly. But as things scale up, back in stock is basically just a money printer and a very easy to execute item. Maybe not the easiest to execute, but it works really well.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I like that. I want to talk about some of the behavior cycles because you've brought these up before. We talked about it in the intro. I love how you compare customer behavior to gardening and moon cycles. Can you give an example of how you've actually mapped a marketing calendar around some of these rhythms?
So that's a really good question. I would say when we're talking about, I'm trying to think of a good scenario here. I think that when you're talking about relevance, once again, we're talking about there's 2 key components to what we're executing on a normal basis. So we're building out a roadmap. So roadmap is typically like initiatives that need to be taking place. So think of it as like ongoing projects or projects in order, and then we're project managing them. And then campaigns. So campaigns is basically your calendar. So calendar strategy, calendar management, calendar collaboration is basically our wheelhouse there. So I think that it's the cycles that we're thinking of are actually cycles that are broad too. I'm not saying that we're going to send something just on the new moon, which it's actually the new moon tomorrow morning.
Oh, nice.
So I think that when we're thinking of it, we're thinking of what does the calendar look like for the year, and then what are the holidays for the year? What are the things that are relevant to your brand? Working with a lot of skincare brands, for example, summer, where there's an extra lean into SPF. In the winter, when you're talking about SPF, you might be talking a little bit more about longevity, right? So you're speaking to the same things differently depending on what's happening around where you're communicating and how you're communicating. When you're talking about rejuvenating masks, et cetera, like it should be to look forward to something. It should be thematically relevant. One of our brands is a very high-end jewelry brand. And so obviously with Wimbledon recently, we wanted to make sure that like there was at least subtle Wimbledon references within emails for tennis bracelets, which are, incredibly gorgeous items made famous by the sport of tennis, and particularly historically at Wimbledon. So there are things that you want to play into that are occurring throughout the year, but this is also relevant for like Black Friday, Cyber Monday. This is also relevant for culturally now. We're all attuned to Prime Day. So when we're looking at Prime Day here, we're like most brands should be messaging something, unless you're not doing any discounts at all whatsoever as a brand. Most brands should be messaging something relevant during 100%. This time frame, even if they're not selling on Amazon, because people have their wallets out and they're planning on spending.
They're primed to buy.
Yeah, prime time to buy. And so when people are getting primed to purchase, you want to be there, but also when people are being primed for anything that's relevant because of the time frame, the whether or not that's 4th of July or Labor Day, or the traditional holidays where they're sales oriented periods, or it's things that are very specific to your brand, your product offerings, your stage of life. One of the brands that we're talking to right now is a brand that's focused on furniture for babies. So when we're talking about cribs and furniture and decorations. So what becomes the most critical then? I mean, I hear there is a correlation between moon cycle and childbirth, but I don't want to get
for sure. Makes sense.
But I think one of the things that we focus that we're planning on implementing here is really an extreme focus on when is the estimated date of birth, and then like when are people making decisions on this, like what does the typical buying cycle look like? How do we make sure that we're serving people the items that they want? Are they just getting the nursery set up initially with a crib and some blankets and some toys? They're going to receive gifts. It's a community event, obviously, so there's like registries as well that are involved in this process. And so what's going to be fulfilled by the registry? How are people going to feel after the baby comes? Are they going to be interested in maybe exploring more furniture then? What furniture do they feel like they need before the baby comes? And then after the baby's born, is this their first child? Is it their second child? Is it their third child? So understanding as much as we possibly can, this is where zero party day comes into play, but understanding as much as we possibly can about this customer and where they're at in their maternity journey. I mean, I know you have children, I have children. These are deeply emotional parts of our lives, and like what comes into play for somebody that's making those purchases. There's a lot that matters. Style, yes, of course, but really safety, practicality, like where is it going to be in your house? Like, do you think that, is there going to be a transition between crib and side of the bed, and when does that take place? Or vice versa, like, do we want to give options for being in the bed before going to the side of the bed, before going into the crib? Does this crib convert into something? Do we need to have healthy beds afterwards? And so just going through all of those things, we're talking about, so when we're saying life cycle, we're like, this is actually an example of like a human life cycle, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about human life cycles. What are you doing in your life? What cycle of life are you in? And what do you buy because of that? Right now, I'm obsessed with some longevity stuff. I know it's a little stereotypical. It might be a little stereotypical.
It is. I'm in there too. So I signed up for Function Health. I did all that stuff. I'm 40 this year, right? So it's like, all right, I got to start doing all this stuff. But yeah, so longevity, stereotypical.
It's very stereotypical, but yeah. So I started getting very, very healthy at like 39. I'm 41. My birthday's coming up too. So I think that so that's some aspects. So for this audience, of what are you doing during this time of your life? What are you focused on? You're not concerned that you're going to die next year, right? But what you are concerned with is that you have kids and you want to make sure that you're healthy and happy for them. You're also concerned that in 30 years that you're around so that you can maybe meet your grandchildren, maybe be lucky enough to live another 50, 60 years so that you can meet your great grandchildren and spend time with them. And so really talking about these stages of development of like a normal human life and a life cycle, and really getting deep into like, so oftentimes brands have their own persona development, but we really need to peel back the layers in order to make sure that we're giving communication that makes sense. And maybe that communication is broad at first, and then it gets more specific as we learn more over time too. So I don't want to say like we're coming in hot, like, 39-year-old male, let's get him,
But it makes sense. And so like you uncover these things, there's human life cycles. I like that there's a lot of psychographics that can go into this. Just ask BuzzFeed. They probably have all the information about what we need to do here.
Yeah.
But so you're working on those. I do like that you called out though, like moon cycles. And I didn't think about it, but it's like, it probably affects more than we realize. What about some of those like smaller, more hidden, nuanced things that are outside of the human life cycle? How can brands discover those things that are, and I'll give another example here too. Like, so you talked about seasonal ones. Another seasonal one that's maybe interesting. I haven't looked at this, but I was tempted to go over to Google Trends here and just look at this right now, but I was like, I'll get distracted. But okay, sunglasses. You talked about SPF. Sunglasses. I live in Minnesota. I'm sure that sunglasses in summertime go up in Minnesota because all of a sudden the sun comes out and we're excited about it. But I would also be surprised if there wasn't a smaller blip that took place in like January, because all of a sudden it's snowy and that is bright white light hitting your eyes and you can't see in January. And so sunglasses come out again in January in Minnesota, and you think, January in Minnesota, why do we need sunglasses? But you do, right? So like there's like these little nuanced things that you might not know to look for unless you're just like, really with it and you're aware. How do you discover some of these things?
So, I mean, I think a lot of it is understanding. The founders of the brand, the leaders of the brand, the insiders at the brand. This is why. So we're basically outsourced lifecycle marketing department, and we are, passionate to know everything that we possibly can about the brands that we're working with and their psychographics, demographics, customer behavior, et cetera. But really, if you've been a part of this brand for 5, 6, 7 years, and you're on the marketing team or marketing leadership, then you are going to have some great insider information just about your client base and customer base and things that you haven't done. And I guarantee you, every single brand has a wish list, whether or not it's actually formally written, of like things that they wish that they could be doing in regards to like their life cycle marketing. And we want that wish list. We want to understand. We want to understand that you have a high cohort of clients in Minnesota. We know that Minnesota has the worst snow ever in the United States, but Canada still scoffs at it. And as such, you love hockey, and you're going to have a huge glare off of the ice.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And so I think that works perfectly. I think the other things are so I think you can uncover these things from learning. You can uncover these things from thinking, planning, and strategizing. At the email marketing agency that I used to work at, we had a technology that we developed. We developed a complete separate brand, actually, that was weather-based email targeting. So it was actually triggering emails based off of the local weather. So what we're doing is we're pulling API weather data, making it more robust by reviewing a few different technologies. We're overlaying that over zip code throughout the United States, and then you could trigger off a message to everywhere where it's raining right now. Obviously, you want to put some caps on it, and then you want to be a little more sensitive, in the Pacific Northwest, where I am currently. But I think that being as aware as possible, if it's over 100 degrees. Is there that gives you a great reason to message somebody. If it's sunny and clear, maybe there's another reason to message somebody. And so these weren't to be used like on a constant basis. They're obviously, you wanted to make sure that you had caps on it and you had control over it. It still played into your messaging hierarchy, but you could get really intimate in regards to messaging for it. And one of our largest clients, obviously, so we had an extremely large sunglass conglomerate, I'll say, as a client, but we also had another brand that was insurance oriented. And so for insurance, actually, it is like the best fit ever. So once we kind of built it for e-commerce and thinking apparel, and apparel did work well, and sunglasses worked. But insurance actually is where the bread and butter is. If you have a hailstorm or a severe weather alert, then you can time a message after for getting a claim for like the rocks through your windshield, et cetera. And so there's actually a whole thought process about like cycles and relevance and like what's going on with the weather that affects us all, and how that makes an impact. So that said, we still want to collaborate with folks inside the brand that are, and we will collaborate on an ongoing basis. The other side is, and this just came to mind when you were talking about, when you were introing it, this is where I thought you were going with it, but the fact of the matter of time of day and day of week to send. I think a lot of brands, they kick off and they will just start sending, they'll send at a specific time of day that somebody else recommended. And then they'll send the 3 messages on 3 separate days, the same exact 3 days a week, which I do think is good for like training your database, exactly when to expect messages, et cetera. But it's worth testing. It's worth testing. Are there optimum times to be sending messages? Could you utilize AI in order to choose the best send time per candidate? Yes. Or if this message is time sensitive and does need to go out at specific times, is there a best time that's for like your entire database? Are you just US based? Are you global? If you are global, is everybody in American English and stuff like that? Like how relevant and accurate are you getting? And then secondarily, days of the week. So we have a brand that tried and true, they actually do new arrivals email every single Saturday. And it is high performing. It is a beautiful email that we like. We actually spend the most time on, but it is a weekly email, comes out once a week, and it's with new arrivals that come in stock every single week, and everybody loves it. It is unbelievable, just open rates, click-through rates, purchase rates. It's like their number one driver.
Best.
And so, yes, that is like a perfect scenario, but maybe they have, let's look at the other emails they're sending out. Do those need to be on like the specific day, at the same time? Not really. We should change it up. We should also make sure that we're, creating a different experience, because maybe you're missing the messages because all of the messages are coming in at 9 a.m. your time, and at 9 a.m. your time you're always doing XYZ. So maybe if they just came at 11:15, you actually are normally taking like your break right before you do your last thing right before lunch, and that's a better time for you to receive it. So I think testing out your audience, testing out your demographics, and testing out your messaging makes sense. And then also, once again, with machine learning and AI and tools built into ESPs, some of this is already available data for you that just people don't use.
Yeah. I remember there was a time when hanging out with my brother-in-law, and he came home at like 2 a.m. and I walk out in the kitchen because he's making a bunch of noise, right? It's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm making a chicken Caesar salad. You want some? I'm like, no, I want you to be quiet so I can go back to bed. And so to your point, I like a chicken Caesar salad, right? Like I would appreciate that maybe at noon, but not at 2 a.m. And so finding that right time for each person, it was apparently the right time for him at 2 a.m. Yeah. Chicken Caesar salad.
I can't remember what brand it is right now. We used to work with this brand, and we were doing testing, and we were like, we had this hypothesis that maybe this was something. I can't remember what the product was. It was something that like correlated with like going out, or it was for hangovers. It wasn't actually explicitly for hangovers. Hangovers was like one of the things that it could be utilized for. And it was a drink. And so we decided to do some testing for sending it out at like 12 a.m., 1 p.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
Sure.
And it actually turned out that like 2 a.m., best time ever to send this email on a Friday and Saturday. And so it was something that we did like on a monthly basis. We'd actually send that on a weekend night, because the audience that's interested in it for that use, actually, that's the best time to actually contact them about it, because that's what it can add the most value to their lives.
Brilliant. I want to talk about authenticity that converts, because you and I have talked about authenticity and how that plays a role in this. I feel like authenticity gets watered down really quickly, right? A brand can be authentic for a message, and then very quickly they're not. They're right back into buy more of our stuff. How do you separate real brand intimacy from the BS?
So, I mean, I guess the endless question, right? I do think it is the endless question. So really, brands, and this is where it comes into like personification. How well does that brand have set values, and a set culture, and a set way of communicating, and set colors, and set guardrails for what influencers they will and will not use, set guardrails for the type of imagery they'll use and how it will come across, and what the level of what the level of, I want to say classiness, but maybe that's the wrong word, that they'll want to use. So everyone in their own personal life has these guardrails, has these values, etc. And maybe you won't know exactly from looking at them, but you might get a hint from looking at them, from talking to them, from getting to know them a little bit. But a brand needs to exude those qualities in all that they do. And so this is why well-defined brands that really do have these tight guardrails are great clients, and they also are great opportunities for continuing to grow and continue to expand and continuing to flourish, because the earlier that you have it all dialed in, which I'm not saying it's like you don't need to get it all dialed in like sub 1 million or maybe sub 3 million, and like, I mean, by all means, like, I understand not everything's perfect, and I'm not trying to say people need to be perfect. You don't. But I do think that that when you do have a lot of these core features and functionalities of the vision, the mission of the company, core values, et cetera, dialed in, that you're able to be authentic as a company. And then you translate that authenticity to the communication mechanisms. So in communication, we know what the guardrails are. We know exactly the words that we should use and the words that we don't use when we're talking about things. We know to say value-based things versus sale and discount-oriented things. We know to say sale and discounted things instead of value-based things. We know how we want to be participating in dialogue with our customers. And so some of that we will craft ourselves, and we'll try and fit a persona on how we'll be doing it, and then we can control it on an ongoing basis because we do own the messaging channels, and then we can share that information across verticals with either other agencies or their internal teams that are doing other channels, et cetera. And we can continue to develop from there. But really, it has to start somewhere. Like somebody has it either comes from the top of the organization, or we also can be the tail that wags the dog. But when it comes down to it, that's the only way to be successfully executing at like a very, very high level across the board. And that's when it is authentic. And people say I saw this study, and I'm not going to be able to cite it or where it's from or who it even came from. But the scenario was they were looking for, they interviewed a whole bunch of people, and they had people watch the interviews, and they, with all of like the brain, the brain things on
EEG there.
EEG. And so they were seeing like what the brain activity was. And there's like a series of parts of the brain that like gear towards connection. It actually like lights up several sections of the brain. And what they found is it was actually during the parts when people were most authentic, all of these sections lit up, and then you would like people's hair on their arms would raise. And so people would like mention like that was the biggest impact for me during this specific time. And they went and looked through, and they were like, oh, what question was it? What did the person like? And so on and so forth. And it was all sorts of different questions. Like there wasn't like a clear continuity to it. And so they had to keep digging deeper. Well, was it a certain demographic? Was it was it a tone? Were they like loud or silent? And what they believe they found is that it actually was when people were being their most authentic and raw, that it was able to actually cultivate the best connection with the audience. And so I don't know if you're giving people goosebumps when you're sending emails, just to be clear here, but I do think that the brand, the more authentic the brand is, and the clearer they are on their core values, the better opportunity they have to connect with their audience authentically.
I think there's something to that, though. There's something about truth that I think resonates. Let's just even say in quantum field theory, like there's something that resonates beyond what we can see right now that I think people perceive more than we might realize.
Yeah, I mean, as we've established, I believe in like, divine interdependence of, everyone and everything in the world, and I do think that like quantum theory addresses some of those facets. But really, what it is humans are seeking connection in general, and so creating an authentic connection in real life, in Zoom calls, in email, and it matters, and it should be expanded upon. Now, obviously, nothing beats like real life connection with nature and other animals and other human beings.
Sure.
But I do think that there's an element of it that is usable and is beneficial when it comes to marketing.
This is a good time for me to switch into who is Andrew Christison, because I like getting to know the human being behind who we're talking to. You had quite the multicultural background and childhood. Tell me a little bit about your childhood and how that's helped shape you.
Yes. So I so my dad is half Japanese and half Scottish. My mom is half Mexican and half Irish and English. The Mexican side is actually half indigenous and half Spanish as well. And so I grew up really close in a close-knit family. I have an older brother and sister, and we spent an unbelievable amount of time with my grandparents too. I was lucky. Both my parents are the second oldest in their families of 5 children each, and we live close to them, so we got to see them our entire childhood, which was incredible. And so having had kind of like this, melting pot of a background, it really makes you identify and know that you are so clearly a part of, so clearly like just like everybody else, and so clearly not like anybody else. And so when people say like humans are like 98.9% exactly identical, and it's just that like extra 1.1% of our DNA modifications that make us a little bit different, I think that makes sense, and I think that people need to recognize that we are actually all the same species and come from the same background. My parents were super hardworking. I was actually thinking about this after our last call. So my parents always encouraged us to like do things and pushed us to become what we ended up becoming. But basically, my mom was a leader in I was born and raised Catholic, and she was a leader in our church. And she was, so I participated in all of the things like, as an altar boy, a lector, a Eucharistic minister. I led retreats, I led youth group, et cetera, et cetera. And in addition to that, I also taught like religious education to second graders for like several years as a child. So she would like impromptu, like have me come and like speak to like groups of children or parents. And I particularly remember one time I was 10 years old, and I was talking to the parents of 7-year-olds, teaching them how to like better connect and explain things to their children, which is just the most preposterous thing to think about in retrospect. I realized it was preposterous about 10 years later, but at that time it seemed like perfectly normal to me that could occur. In addition to that, like my dad, he was like, I used to have a newspaper route. You should get a newspaper route. So during 7th and 8th grade, I actually had a newspaper route that I did every single day for 2 full calendar years, and then I quit right before I started high school. Probably should have continued, honestly, but it was fun.
Good
I rollerbladed it.
Nice.
And a lot of that stuff, I mean, putting yourself out of your comfort zone for like public speaking or dealing with like groups and stuff like that, I think I was really lucky. It's not like I wasn't nervous, and I still would get nervous for quite a bit of time after that. And then doing the newspaper route, once again, didn't pay very much. It wasn't big money then or now. The per hour rate was like less than minimum wage if you actually calculate
Sure.
it. But for me, it was fantastic. And I loved like waking up and like going and like I was responsible for doing it. I was responsible for going and collecting the money door to door. Most people weren't mailing in checks and stuff. Yep. And so it was like really great, really fun, really fulfilling. My dad also would be like, hey, you know, like, because I wouldn't meet most of the people because they don't wake up at 5 a.m. So he would say, hey, on holidays, you should print out something saying like Happy Thanksgiving from your paperboy. And so like I started making these flyers that were 1-page flyers on our printers, and then I would wrap them in the newspaper on like Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And so it would make people remember, and then it would actually prompt them to tip me better. And stuff like that. So I think that I was very lucky to grow up in a environment where I felt a lot of love and had a lot of support throughout. And then I think also having the multicultural background, it gave me a predisposition towards compassion for other people and other people's situations, and really kind of understanding the migratory patterns of humans and civilization throughout the world a little bit more deeply.
I love that. I had a paper route as well, and I was also, at the point where I had to go and collect the money door to door. And you're right, it challenged you. I didn't rollerblade though. I didn't think about that. We rode our bikes. We just like wrap it around our bike, and ride around there, my brothers and I. And no, it was a very good learning experience, and I'm very thankful that I had that growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they let kids do it. I mean, I kind of understand why they wouldn't.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think they let kids do it anymore. And but yeah, it was fun. And also, if you think about it, it made so little money that like an adult in a vehicle could cover like 10 times.
Sure.
I did. But the way that it was organized was, I'm glad that I was able to participate in it. It also gave me, and you might have done this too, they would do like these pizza nights like once a month on Wednesday nights, and you could go in and you get free pizza with the other paper boys. And then, or I say paper boy, but there was girls too. And
totally, yeah.
And we would cold call people basically asking them to subscribe.
Yes.
And then I would get like a $2 commission if they subscribed.
Yes.
But I was just there for the pizza. I was just there for the pizza,
Oh, that's so good. Well, my other favorite memory from that was when we would get paid, we actually had to go and meet at the mall. And so I think it was Canton Center Mall that we would meet at, and they would give you the money. And I had my own checkbook then as like an 11-year-old. I felt like a super baller. But then right next to that was Camelot Music. And so I would go over there and I'd spend a little bit of my money that I just made on CDs. But before that was tapes, right? So it's like tapes. So it's like I'd go over there and I'd buy a new tape or something.
That's sweet. That's sweet. Here, wait. I'll share one more tidbit here. So I would have to do the same thing. So I always owed money, so I had to pay money first because more people didn't send in their money.
Sure.
Yes.
So right. You had to turn that in, the money that you collected.
Yeah. So I had to turn in the money that I collected, and then I would get to keep the rest. And so when I would go in, I had to go to Bank of America. So that's the bank that they went to. So talk about customer experience. They always treated me so terrible.
Really?
So terrible. And I was like a little kid, I was 11, 12 years old. And there was never somebody being nice to me there. They were always seemed like annoyed and like bothered when I was there.
Man.
And I was always just trying to give them money for them to deposit into this account so that I could be like even, and then I could keep all the collection from there. But because I had to go there every single month for 2 years and I never had a good experience, honestly, like I've just never said anything nice about Bank of America in my entire life.
Wow.
And so if you think about that from like how are you communicating with your customers? And maybe it doesn't need to be 24 times. There are places that I've been insulted once and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't go there anymore. I think that that's what you need to think about when you're managing communications for a brand. This is whether it's PR or paid marketing or any type of communications on behalf of a brand, even if you're a CS agent or an employee, I would say. It's something to think about. People are impacted by experience, and Bank of America, I mean, they could, if they give me the best experience of my life, they probably could have made a ton of money on my lifetime value. at this point in time. But when I turned 16 and I was able to get my own bank account completely, I demanded to go somewhere else, and so on and so forth. And I just never went back. So there's a tidbit of a lesson there, I think, in CX.
I can't share in your misery there. I went to a credit union. They had a little toy train that I could play with.
Oh, nice.
It was a completely different experience.
That's good.
You also like to just learn about lots of things. And this is something that you and I share. It's like, I like to learn about anything, whatever the rabbit trail is that I want to learn about. And one of the things you told me that you actually are going down the rabbit trail of right now is rocks.
Yeah.
Tell me about rocks.
So, so once again, this is interdependent. So I believe there's this concept in Buddhism. I mean, so I'll start with non-Buddhism. So Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yep. I read a lot of personal development growing up also, thanks to my parents. So the last one is, the 7th habit is interdependence. And so this is really where it's basically saying this is like where you should be operating. If you actually read Peter Drucker's work also, he talks about interdependence as like a huge value also organizationally. But really, I look at it even like at a way deeper level, like in more of a Buddhist philosophy of like interdependent co-arising, in which we are like all completely interdependent. This is kind of like karmic, etc., the law of cause and effect, the things that you were talking about in regards to like quantum, quantum particles. But if you think about it in regards to, wait, I forgot what the exact.
Just rocks.
No, when you think about it in regards to rocks, rocks are freaking miraculous, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They are freaking miraculous. So I live in the Pacific Northwest, and here we actually there's a rock formation off the coastline of a huge limestone deposit that's 12 to 18 million years old. That sits upon another deposit that's like 30 to 45 million years old. And so when you're going through the beaches, you can find agates, you can find really unique rocks of all different types. And I basically didn't know anything except that I like going. I mean, I've gone to the beach for a long time, but I just started going to the beach recently and checking out the rocks and like collecting rocks and like looking at rocks and collecting. And my wife ended up giving me a rock tumbler because I collected all these cool fossils and rocks that I found. And so I started tumbling rocks and then better identifying them and then understanding where they are at in the rock cycle, which is basically just the completely recycling of the matter on Earth. Limestone actually is biological matter. So this is like past civilizations, past human plant matter that has been compacted over time. And you can see that there's a lot of history in every single rock that you're at. And so walking across my property out here, I started looking at the rocks that I have, and I realized that I have like these huge granite deposits, which actually aren't from my area, and it's likely from like a glacial melting during the last ice age that ended up dropping off these huge boulders on my property over time. And so I think that when you think about things on a long enough timeline, and we were talking about, we also talked a little bit, I'm like a little genealogy nerd as well. So I've been able to trace my lineage back to a lot of like the master profiles. So I can go back into, you know, royalty. So whenever Lord's song comes on, I'll be like, except for us, you can call me sire.
Pardon me, do you have any Grey Poupon?
My name is Duke Christison. So I think that when you go back far enough, you realize, oh my God, like how many grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents do we have? And then how interconnected are we? Like I'm connected to like a bunch of presidents, like pretty, like during, like they're several cousins away. And this is just through connecting a couple of the many lines that I have. And so I think that when you look back on a long enough timeline, you see that we're all related. We must all be related, no matter how similar or different we look. We're definitely all from the same lineage. It's just a matter of when and where we are. And the same is true for rocks. Rocks actually have gone through like every stage of development and transformation as well. When you're looking at 4.6 billion years, and we're talking about a rock formation from 12 to 18 million years ago, we're talking about like the difference between, you know, there's a difference between a millionaire and a billionaire, and it's a lot of money. And it's a lot of numbers, and that's a lot of time and a lot of compacting and a lot of transformation. And those things will continue to happen over time. So I think that rocks by themselves are super interesting and cool. They tell you a story when you look at them, and then simultaneously, beyond the little story that they tell you, they also like tie you into like the world on like a much deeper level, and ancestors and ancestry and what could have been and would have been living during the time period that those came from.
I love it. The way that you nerd out about rocks is probably the way I learned about light. And what's interesting is, and I'm drawing a blank on the name. I was trying to look it up here real quick, but there's like double polarized light, and there's a name for this where it's polarized one direction and then also polarized in the other direction, right?
Yeah.
When you look at rocks through double polarized light, there are a couple of them. Most rocks end up looking like bland, like nothing then. When you look through it with this double polarized light, there are 12 of them that I know that they've identified. There may be a couple others, but I know there's 12 that they've identified that are absolutely amazing. Some of the most beautiful things you can ever think of. Interestingly enough, those 12 are the ones that are found that the Bible lists as being on the gates of heaven.
What?
Right. And you're just like, wait a minute, this was written way before we even understand now about double cross polarized light. And so I would say that because of my fascination with light, I have a fascination with some stones and rocks now too. And so I love that you shared that.
Well, so I'll go a step further. And so there's also, there's also in Buddhism, they have this thing, it's called the Noble Eightfold Path. And basically think of like right view, right perspective. Okay. Are a couple of them, but basically you get any right, you get them all right. That's how it goes. And so what is the right view? And the right view is this everything's transient, everything's interconnected sort of thing, right? And so if you think about it from the perspective of how are we capable as humans with these eyes actually seeing right view? I don't think so. So this is where it's a little tricky, because we know that we can only see a tiny part of the light spectrum at all. Like a very minuscule amount. Yes. And there's tons of other animals and creatures that can see far more than we can. Simultaneously, our ears, can we hear the best of any animal? Absolutely not. There's whales that are like communicating like miles and miles away from each other and communicating in ways that we don't even understand. Like dolphins, simultaneously, they're communicating in ways that we just don't even understand, that we can't even really grasp how it is actually occurring. So when we touch something, are we touching it like, is that like exactly how it feels? I mean, that's a relative question. That's a relative answer to who we are, what our epidermis looks like, and how it's actually structured. And so when you think about like what is the right point of view and what is like the best perspective, I wonder if in the Bible, there are people that also have unbelievable hearing. There are people that have unbelievable smell. I read about this woman that could smell Parkinson's, and she actually could smell Parkinson's disease, and they ended up figuring it out, and she was able to basically smell before they were diagnosed with Parkinson's.
That's crazy.
And so and people can taste like a wide spectrum. Like I don't think I could be a sommelier. In fact, my DNA evidence says
neither.
Your taste might not be that good. But I think that having there's this whole spectrum of experience that we are all individually and independently lacking. So to understand the world and to understand the interconnectedness, you have to kind of go beyond what you feel like you're experiencing as well, because there is a greater experience that you're a part of that you need to acknowledge.
That's beautiful. We're getting to my favorite part of the conversation, and I have to end it here, which stinks.
Okay.
Because I would go on this for the next hour. But Andrew, I do want to say, like, thank you for sharing your time, sharing your wisdom with us. If people wanted to follow you or they wanted to work with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn, probably. My name is Andrew, Andrew, Christison, like Christ is on, probably in the show notes. And I'm a co-founder and CEO of Retencity, Retencity.com. So either way is easy peasy, or you can contact William and say, yo, I want to speak with Andrew. Let's do this.
I will give you his cell phone number. You can call him at 2 a.m.
Perfect.
Make a chicken Caesar salad.
yeah, I'll be sleeping then. I'm not the demographic for those.
Yeah. No, but again, thank you for sharing your time, sharing your wisdom with us. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. And maybe we'll have to come a part 2 where we actually just go on on quantum field theory and physics and stuff like that.
Yeah, we can get weird, but I massively appreciate your time. This has been a pleasure and hopefully helpful for your audience in regards to how they think about stepping up their marketing game.
I'm sure it has been. Thank you everyone for listening. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.